Hi there, Malcolm here with my 46th Booktube video, and today I'll be bringing you my September wrap-up. In September I managed 9 books, and this is what they were. Plagueworld by Alex Scarrow. This is book 3 of the remade trilogy. A story featuring a virulent plague that melts people down to their component parts and then does something to what's left. This was my book of the month, and so I did an individual review of it. I'll leave a link to that below. Go check that out if you want to know what I thought of it. After reading that, I read my library book, War of the Worlds Global Dispatches, edited by Kevin J. Anderson. This book features a series of short stories chronicling the events of the Martian War from the eyes of various famous characters. What looked to be a promising exploration of the Martian War unfortunately turned out to be a rather repetitive retreading of the original story. Okay, sometimes we're in China, sometimes we're in Africa or America, but for the most part they don't really add much to the story. However, there was one standout story featuring John Carpenter of Mars, who, on Mars, was able to stop more vessels coming over. With the exception of that one, I would say the whole thing was rather boring, just plain dull. After that, I then went on to complete StarCraft Ghost Nova by Keith R.A. DiCandido, book I started back in August, but ran out of month. Heavily influenced by Alfred Beste's The Demolished Man, this book follows a young girl called November, who attains full psionic powers after witnessing the death of her family. I would say that the cover is a little bit misleading, as this is the end product, whereas the majority of the story features her in the gutter amongst gangsters just trying to stay alive, while at the same time a detective is trying to track her down and recruit her for the Ghost program. Despite the content not quite being what I was expecting, I really enjoyed this one and found that it enriched the StarCraft universe very rewardingly. And like I said in a previous video, I would recommend this book even if you don't know StarCraft, as there's very little of that in this book. There may be a couple of throwaway planet references or whatever, but for the most part this could be a standalone story unassigned to any existing franchise. Booktastic. And then I finally finished reading to my son Muddle Earth 2 by Paul Stewart and Chris Riddle. Joe the Barbarian finds himself back in the crazy land of Muddle Earth, this time with his sister, with 3 new crazy adventures to go on. This heavily spoofs The Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, The Chronicles of Narnia, amongst other similar fantasy books, and was great fun to read aloud to my son. Featuring Gandalf the Wise and Not Very Good Wizard, the Ogre, no but they're not very big, Veronica the Budgie, and Lord Asbo, Dean of the University of whatever, amongst many other characters. Full of Chris Riddle's wonderful drawings, as well as many zany and crazy artifacts and scenarios and creatures. My son absolutely loved this one and says it's booktastic. Had I read this quietly to myself, I would have rated it lower, but reading it aloud really does make it a very enjoyable experience. After that, I read one of the graphic novels I said I was going to, Star Wars Underworld, the Yavin Basilica. This is a quirky treasure hunting farce set before the original film, featuring Han Solo, Lando Calrissian, Chewbacca, Boba Fett, Zuckuss, Forlom, Bosk, IG-88, Greedo, as they all try to outdo each other to be first to get to the Yavin Basilica and return it to the Hutts, who have a bet on to see who does it first. I love the stylistic artwork, and also the fact that Greedo actually gets a significant part in all this. Okay, he's not a major character, but he's in it a lot. Entirely enjoyable, and again, booktastic. From one Harrison Ford franchise to another, I then read the novelisation of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull by James Rowlands. I know many found the film a lot left to be desired. I quite enjoyed it personally. Yes, it's not as good as the originals, but still, I found enough enjoyment in it. And being a fan of James Rowlands already, I thought I might give this a go. As before, my main complaint is there's not much more in here that isn't in the film. Quite often with novelisations, you do get a bit of extra stuff that is either left on the cutting room floor, or they didn't film, or they actually changed in the script and never happened in the first place. But this is pretty much what was in the film, and I found it actually worked better. Yes, I was able to visualise, having seen the film, the things going on in here, but because James Rowlands was able to put his own spin on the action and the scenes, a lot of the things that came across as silly in the film actually weren't quite so bad in the book. And I'd be very curious to see if any one of you has read this without actually seeing the film first, and what your take on it is. Don't think there'll be many of those people though. Worth reading. I then finished book 6 of the Gone series by Michael Grant, Light. This is the end of the core series of books. He subsequently written Monster, but that follows on quite a bit later. The survivors of Perdido Beach may see the end in sight, as the dome has now gone transparent and the outside world can now look in, and they can now see out. However, the Gaiaphage is back and is intent on the destruction of everybody alive in the dome. So once again, it's a battle of survival against hunger, against each other, against the flesh-eating worms, and against an alien menace. Gratefully, at the end of the series, we do actually find a lot of answers. What is the Gaiaphage? Where did it come from? Why is it intent on doing what it's doing? As well as some of the other things we've been waiting to find out. And the warning on the back saying that there are scenes of cruelty and violence isn't lying. Not for the faint-hearted. Very enjoyable read, very enjoyable series. Highly recommend it to those people who like this sort of thing. Booktastic. I've had a good month. And then I finished The Stainless Steel Rat Wants You by Harry Harrison. It's another delightful adventure that slippery Jim DeGriz goes on. This time his job is to save the entire galaxy from an as yet unknown coalition of alien beings. And after going undercover, he discovers that they are in fact being manipulated by an old foe. Can Jim save the day? Well, of course he can, but he has great fun doing it. Worth buying. And finally, another library book. I read Harley Quinn's Greatest Hits. This volume is a collection of Harley Quinn's stories from through the ages, including her very first ever appearance in Batgirl Day 1, Harley Quinn interrupting an opera in The Opera, Harley Quinn taking off her costume and going back home for the holiday season in Holiday Story, as well as some other stories where they're fighting Deadshot and being part of the Suicide Squad. Collected from a series of eras by different writers, different illustrators, different comics, all of which feature Harley Quinn in some capacity, not necessarily as the main character though, and for the most part really enjoyable. I particularly appreciated the quick summary right at the beginning, giving you her story. So just in case you're not up to speed with who Harley Quinn is and her history, I personally found it very enlightening. I knew some things, I've played the Arkham games for example, but beyond that my knowledge was somewhat limited. Worth reading. There you go, I hope you enjoyed that, I certainly did. If you have questions or comments, I'd love to know, so please put your comments below, or your own link or lists of books that you've read in September. As usual, if you have nothing nice to say, then please keep it to yourself. Thank you. Until next time, see you later.